saying. Kumlen Lablak Gemara, we are up to Masechta Sukah Daf Mem Aleph Amud Aleph. We are up to the Mishnah. So we finished the study about an essig of Shemitah and a lulav of Shemitah, which is quite relevant this coming year. But we're up to the Mishnah, Barishayna. In the olden days, Hoya lulav nitl b'mikdash. In the base of Mikdash, the mitzvah was Shiva 7 days. The pasuk says, "Smachtem lifnei Hashem lekechem Shivas Yamim." So the mitzvah was for 7 days to take lulav. There's a machlek, and but Medina, in the rest of the country, Yom Echad 1 day. The rest of the country, according to Rashi, means anywhere outside the base of Mikdash. According to the Rambam and this Mishnah here, it means anywhere outside of Shalim. Shalim is considered part of the Mikdash. And questionable according to the Rambam whether today Yerushalayim without the base of Mikdash is still Chayiv Mahatera 7 days or not. A big argument also, if the base of Mikdash you Chayiv 7 days, so is there a mitzvah for everybody who's near the base of Mikdash to go to the base of Mikdash in order to make themselves Chayiv Mahatera? Or it means if you happen to be in the base of Mikdash, you have to then bench 7 days. Now, in other words, there's more din on the base of Mikdash than on the individual. So that's a discussion as well. Misha Chada base of Mikdash, after the base of Mikdash was destroyed, Hiskin Rabbi Yechon Mezaka. We learn in Masechet Rosh Hashanah, Rabbi Yechon Mezaka made a number of takanas, 10 I think in total, but these are, we're going to mention 2, even though only one of them is relevant to our Gemara here. Rabbi Yechon Mezaka instituted Sheyei Lulav Nitl B'Medina Shiva Zeichel Mikdash. That today we bench lulav everywhere 7 days, only to remember what happened in the base of Mikdash. In other words, in the olden days, they used to bench lulav the first day and that was it. They didn't bench lulav the rest. It was only after Bechem Mezakai that we benched lulav the rest of the days. And why do we bench the rest of the days? To remember what it was in the base of Mikdash. So it's an interesting question I heard a while ago. How come when it comes to Sfiras HaOmer, right after we count Sfiras HaOmer, we say Harachman, Achsalonu, we want the base of Mikdash back, because the whole reason why we count Sfira is to remember the base of Mikdash. And why by Lulav today, at the second day and onwards, don't we say also Harachman and Achsalonu, and or Yiratz, she bought the base of Mikdash, something, because Zeichel Mikdash. So one answer is, because the first day we bench lulav is not because of Zeichel Mikdash, we do because the Torah said. So therefore, the rest of the days we don't say Zeichel Mikdash. By Sfira, even the first day, it's Zeichel Mikdash. There's no reason to count Sfira today other than to remember what it was then. So that's why by Sfira, the entire mitzvah is Zeichel Mikdash. We say it, and by lulav, it's only the second day and onwards. Okay. And the next thing he also said was, which has nothing to do with Sukkot, it's to do with Pesach. Yom Hanef Kuli Asr. It used to be that the new crop, Chodesh, you're not allowed to eat it until you brought a carbon, Omer, which was on the second day of Pesach, the 16th day of Nisan, they brought a carbon, you were able to eat the Chodesh. But he says, when there's no longer a Beis HaMikdash, you no longer had that carbon, he said, you know what, the entire day is Asa, you can only start eating the 17th day, or the second day of Chalamayit, as Moro explained. Talking about it, first of all, Minola, how do we know? How do you know that you have to make a Zeichel Mikdash? Rabbi Yechon came along and made a new mitzvah, but he would have had to have some kind of basis for it. Where does he get it from? Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yechon, how are you supposed to remember the Beis Hamikdash? It says in Pasuk, Ki Allah, I'll produce Aruchalach, I'll give you some kind of healing. I'll cure you from all your wounds. Neum Hashem, says the Eibishter, Ki nidocha karalach, because you guys were rejected. Tzion he. This is Tzion, which is Yerushalayim. Doirish Einla, but there's nobody, and the problem is that there's nobody inquiring about it. Nobody really cares about it. Doirish Einla, we call the Boydisha. We have to inquire. So therefore, we made mitzvahs Zeichel Mikdash. If you remember the Beis Hamikdash, it says, because after the first Beis Hamikdash, they didn't do anything to remember the Beis Hamikdash, so the second one they built didn't last forever. After the second Beis Hamikdash, we made a number of activities to remember the Beis Hamikdash. Therefore, we are going to have a third Beis Hamikdash will be Elam blood. My time, why taka is the entire day awesome? Why the entire awesome? There's no carbon. First thing in the morning, you're allowed to. Says the Gemara, because we believe every single day Mashiach is coming and the Beis Hamikdash will be built. Beis Hamikdash, we believe the Beis Hamikdash will be built very quickly. And the times of Beis Hamikdash, you have to wait for the carbon to be brought. If we're just going to deposit, if we're going to wait until this day in the morning, first thing in the morning, eat the new crop, even the base of will be built, will think that you can eat a new crop first thing in the morning. Last year, we ate first thing in the morning. We should eat and first thing in the morning. They don't realize they started last year. The base of didn't have a base of Hey, then first thing in the morning. Add that means till that day. So the first thing in the morning, you're allowed to eat a new crop. But it has to be the base of now the base of is outstanding. You have to wait until when you bring the carbon, and which could be, not first thing in the morning. So the Gemara, I don't understand the problem. Even the aim is precisely when you're worried that the base will be built quickly, and therefore we are worried about the Easter of Chodesh the entire day. Even the base will be built, so they bring a carbon in the morning. So you should say by 12 o'clock you're allowed to eat. Why the entire day is also? So there must be obviously a reason that the base is not built yet, and it will be built. That suddenly we have a problem that particular year it might have to wait the whole day. What's the story there? When was it built? Even the Beshitza, if you tell me that was built on that day itself, on the 16th day, then who cares? As soon as the morning started, the Beis Hamikdash wasn't built yet. So the morning was, you're allowed to eat the Chodesh. So what's the issue? How do you hit it? Hey, Mizrach, they're permitted first thing in the morning. Ella must be, the evening of the Chameis must be, it was built the first day of Pesach. They built the Beis Hamikdash. So they built the Beis Hamikdash yesterday, Thursday of Pesach. So tomorrow morning, in an orderly fashion, they would have prepared everything that night, harvested and everything else, and did all the sieving and everything else, all the sifting, and then they would bring in normal time. So tell everyone you're not allowed to eat Chodesh until noon, because even the Beis Hamikdash is built by noon, they would have brought the carbon. But now we learned anyone who lives far away from the Beis Hamikdash and has no idea what time they bring the carbon, they can rest assured that from midday onwards they can eat. If you ain't business, but they wouldn't be lazy. At the first opportunity they have, they would bring the carbon out. So what are we worried about? Why did you have to ban the entire day? Saying, well, no, we needed the evening Belaila. What happened? They built the Beis Hamikdash the night of the 16th, so they didn't have any time really at night to prepare everything and harvest. So they'll do it first thing in the morning until by the time they finish preparing, it'll be the last carbon they bring before the carbon Tamish Renavayim. And that is why they decided that there's a possibility that we're not going to be able, when the Beis Hamikdash was built on the night of the 16th, we're not going to be able, they're not going to bring the carbon until the very last minute. So therefore, you know what, we're going to ask an entire day for that very reason. Orina misamilashkiz, which is the same idea, right before or towards the end of the 15th day, either at night, or if you have a problem with night, we'll do it the end of the day. So not enough time, we need the entire next day to bring the carbon. So that's what the Gemara says. And so Rashi asks here a very interesting Rashi. Let's know the Rashi together because it's an interesting Rashi. People wonder if Rashi has a basis for it or not, but everybody follows Rashi. Let's do Rashi, not everybody, but a lot of Rashi. 3 lines from the bottom. Kasha, if you have a question, the Belayla ain't a nivna. What do you mean you build the Beis Hamikdash at night? You can't build at night. The Kamel B'Shavuos ain't being your Beis Hamikdash Belayla. You don't build it at night. See, over Yom HaKav, nor could they have built it before night, which is Yom Tov. Shu Yom Tov. The Kamel B'Shavuos ain't being your Beis Hamikdash Doicha Yom Tov. The build Beis Hamikdash is not push away Yom Tov. So, what does it mean? What's going on here? What do you mean you would think that you build last night, you build yesterday every day? So look what Rashi says here. Hani mili binyan habodim b'nei adam. That's only talking about a Beis Hamikdash built by mankind. Our Mikdash ha'osid, but the Beis Hamikdash of the future. Sha'onu mitzapin that we're waiting for. Bonui umeshuchlu. It's already built and all prepared. And it's in Shemayim. Yigala the Yovim Mishmayim will come down from heaven. Never says Mikdash Hashem. Koinu yodecha. You'll prepare with the Mikdash of Hashem. So we're not going to be building a third Beis Hamikdash. The Eibush is going to send it down from Lamaila. And therefore, there's no problem of it being done by day or at night. It means it'll just come down by day or by night. And so the Lashon Hashem Rishonim, which is very different than what we always learn, because we always say Magid Devar Liyakov Chukov Mishpatov, that the Eibishter is bound by the same rules that we are. If we can't build, he can't build. They say Hu Tziva V'Loi Metzuva. The Ritva writes Hu Tziva. I think it's Ritva. He commands, but he's not commanded. He does not follow his own rules, which flies in the face of everything we learned. All we can just say here is that it's already built. He's not building anything. He's already built. And all he does is he brings it down here. And if bringing it down is not called building. Building is already when he built in the Shemayim. And bringing it down, there's no Isser at all. So maybe that's what it is. Teishas quotes Rashi, and the Ritva and most of the Shayim here quote Rashi. Others disagree. They say that it has to be built by humankind. And the way that explains the Sikh is that we will initiate the building, and then the Beis Hamikdash will come and will be married together, will merge together. Anyway, so that's what we answered. That we're scared that that's going to happen, and therefore we want people to get used to not eating at all the Chodesh that day. Comes when the Gemara says, "I'll tell you what, forget. It's not a takana at all. In fact, the pasuk says either you have a choice. It says either you wait till the carbon is brought, or ad etzem hayom hazeh. You thought ad means until, exclusively, excluding that day. I say ad is including. Ad etzem hayom hazeh means if you have no carbon, you got to wait till the very end of this day. So Rabbi Yochanan didn't make any takana. That is actually the halacha. And he was going to ask her why it says hiskin. It says the Gemara, Amar Nachman Rabbi Yochanan Zakai. Nachman said, Omar, he said, Rabbi Yochanan Zakai, you know, Rabbi Yochanan saying, B'shittas Rabbi Yehuda Omar. He's following Rabbi Yehuda. It can't be that he's following Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yehuda was a student of Rabbi Akiva, who was a student of Belazman Hurkinus, who was a student of Rabbi Yochanan Zakai. It means that shitta was already known before, that Rabbi Yehuda espoused. Omar, I tell you, actually, my tell you, it's forbidden. See what it says. Ad etzem hayom hazeh. You know, the Chodesh until the very essence of this day. Ad itzumah shel yom, until the very end of the day. So it says ad b'chlal. Ad is included. In other words, the very last day. So say, how can you tell me that agreed with him? In fact, there's a whole discussion about miflik polygamy. In fact, they openly argue about this very point. The time we learned after the time we learned after the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, we have the Sunnah Mishnah Rosh Hashanah, where it lists a number of takanos Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. It says that hiskari ben Zakkai shehei yom hanav kol yasa. The entire day is also. Rabbi Yehuda, so there's a conversation. Rabbi Yehuda said to him, "What do you mean you made takana?" The Torah says you're not allowed to, if there's no carbon, you're not allowed to eat chodesh the entire day. Until the end of the day. Says the Gemara, that's no proof. Rabbi Yehuda the Kotoy. Rabbi Yehuda made a mistake. He totally misunderstood Rabbi Yochanan. Who saw midrabanan? He thought that it's midrabanan, that Rabbi Chazak is making some kind of a takana. He said, right, it's Mahat Torah. I says the Gemara says clearly on Mishnah about hiskin come. It says the word hiskin. Hiskin means instituted. Says my hiskin. You know what hiskin means? Dorash. He's the one who initially came up with the drasha that ad etzem hayom hazeh means till the end of this day, and then the hiskin, and he put it out there and made everyone follow this way. So therefore, because everyone was used to eating chadash from 12 and onwards, he came along and said, "Chevra, now there's no Beis Hamikdash anymore. You have to wait till nighttime." So that's what he made it a takana, but it's a takana. This is what the Torah wants, not just he made it up. It says the Mishnah further. We're actually going to see later that even though we don't bench lulav on Shabbos because Kseder the Rabba, we're worried about, you might carry it to shul, but nevertheless, to find you might carry it to shul, or you might take it to a Talmud Chacham, to a bucket, to find out how to make the brachas or how to shake it in the different directions. But by lulav, the first day, they did not make like takana, and they used to bench lulav even on the first day of Sukkot falls on if on the first day of Sukkot even if it fell out on Shabbos, and it changed later on. So it says in Mishnah Yom Tov Shabbos, the first day Yom Tov falls on Shabbos, they used to bench lulav. Kol ha'am melichin es levein. Now, not everybody was in the Beis Hamikdash, so everybody brings their lulavim lebeis hakneses. They will bring their lulavim to the shul. They'll bring it to shul. The Machras on the following day. It's just interesting. I've always wondered, when did Bate Knesset start? When did the idea of shuls begin, that everybody daven in their own place? Did it start right after Anshe Knesset, like Deila came along and put the davening, the format that we have? Is that when it started, before, after? But anyway, here we're talking about, so they all went to their own local shuls, and they would bring the lulav before Shabbos, because you cannot carry Shabbos. So they would bring Kol ha'am melich levei beis hakneses. They would all bring it to shul. Interesting. What do you mean? Kol ha'am means everybody. Why wasn't there an native in all these cities? Why wasn't there a native? And in Shleim, we know there was no native. We look more in Psachim, native, but why wasn't there a native in all these cities all over Israel? But anyway. Lemachas the following day, mashkimin uboyin kol echad ve'echad and makish loy. The next day, every person had to recognize their own lulav, because the night Mish Avachami said, "Ain't other it wasn't be in tradition lulav chavei. Not gates of someone else's lulav." So they all had to notice their own lulav. Even though we're going to learn when it comes to the Beis Hamikdash that over there they had to make. We'll see later. They had to make up that whoever ends up with my lulav, let them keep it. But in the shul, it's a small crowd, so people, it's practical, that impossible that people can recognize their own lulav. by the number of adasim they put in, by the length of it. There's ways of recognizing it. The rest of Yom Tov, and we don't care because you are Yetz of someone else's lulav. Comes along Rabbi Yossi says an interesting thing which we learned already in Masechta Shabbos. A whole machlekes. The concept is if Torah b'dvar mitzvah. Remember we had over there about 2 kids that had to be circumcised. One was on Friday, one was on Shabbos, and you might mix them up, or one was on Shabbos, one was on Sunday, and you mix them up. And we had in the Gemara an argument whether Torah b'dvar mitzvah v'lo asa mitzvah. In other words, if you took the Sunday one and molded it on Shabbos, maybe it's inexcusable. Even though it's Torah b'dvar mitzvah, the mitzvah got you excited, but v'lo asa mitzvah. You took an 8-day-old and you molded on a 7-day, you didn't do anything. But maybe the only time you put it is you took the Friday one and you did it on Shabbos. And the Friday one, even though it's a day late, you still did a mitzvah. So Torah b'dvar mitzvah asa mitzvah. So how machlekes is this? Let's see what Rabbi Yossi says. Rabbi Yossi says, okay, the first day of Sukkot, you have to bench lulav even on Shabbos. So what happened? He got carried away. Yom Tov Harisha Chag Shecholis b'Shabbos b'Shachar. He forgot. V'hoitzi is a lulav b'Shus Rabim, and you took your lulav outside to the Shus Rabim. Right? You went outside because you totally forgot that it's Yom Tov, that it's Shabbos. Potter, you are potter. Why are you potter? You took it out with permission because you have a mitzvah. So it's a Torah b'dvar mitzvah and v'asa mitzvah, and you will do a mitzvah. And because it's Torah mitzvah, and the mitzvah hasn't happened yet, so the pressure of the mitzvah is on you, so that causes you to make a mistake. So therefore, we say you are potter. That's what Rabbi Yossi says. Says how do you know that every single person has to have their own lulav, and you're not yet to someone else's? It says you should take each person needs to take their own lachem to yourselves. What do you mean to yourselves? So word lakachtem is each individual should take. Otherwise, you say lakachta, you should take. And by saying lakachtem is each one in plural. Each one should take their own. And lachem means your own. Vishalachem. Lahoit is a show was a gozel, not borrowed and not stolen. The kanon lachem people are not. Ain't adam yetzi dechavasa. You are not yetzi b'yom to vishal chag below. You're not yetzi someone else's lulav. Elam kein nosalem atan unless they gave it to you as a gift. Otherwise, you are not yetzi with someone else's lulav. So even though by sukkah the din is you could use a borrowed sukkah, by lulav you cannot use a borrowed lulav. Chassidus explains that the kind of achdus that's represented by a sukkah is very different than achdus represented by a lulav. By a lulav, at the end of the day, even though we're tied together, we're still 4 different species. So there's still some kind of separation or identity. Each thing has their own identity. So therefore, it's not a total achdus. So a borrowed one is not yet one with me because there is some place for each identity, and therefore it's not a real achdus. So you cannot use a borrowed, it's totally yours to make it some kind of achdus. By saying in the sukkah, ruin kol yisrael leisha b'sukkah achas, everybody can sit inside the same one sukkah, so we're totally united. So even if it's borrowed, it's still one. We're still united. Yeshua, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Kiva, Ma'aseh these great tanoim. Sheiboim, were traveling by boat. He was a very wealthy man, and he was a nasi as well. And he happened to have a lulav. He paid 1,000 zuz. Sounds familiar. The esrog was cheap. The lulav is what was really expensive, unless the lulav was a generic term for all 4. Not Rabbi Gamliel. Rabbi Gamliel took it to Yatzba. He was Yaitze. Then the Nosna Rabbi Yeshua b'matana. He gave it to Rabbi Yeshua as a gift. Not like Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua took it to the Yotzabay, and he was Yaitsev. The Nasr Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. He did not give it back to Rabbi Gamliel. Most of Shayim say he just passed it on. He wasn't even instructed to do so, but he understood that's what Rabbi Gamliel wanted, so therefore he did it. Others say it doesn't even matter if Rabbi Gamliel wanted, as long as he gave it back at the end. Because we're going to say we're not talking here about he gave as a gift because he wanted it back. We're talking about it as a matana al menas lahachzid. A matana on the condition that you give it back. Especially they were traveling on a ship, they were going chutz la'aretz, so they were 2 days Yom Tov. He definitely needed it back because the second day it had to be his as well, according to most of Shayim. He gave him a matana, not let Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah be Yossi Yaitzev and not the matana b'kigei Rakiva. Interesting. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was a very wealthy man, and yet he didn't buy his own lulav and esrog. You know, remember we had how many sheep he gave each year away from Meiser, and yet he didn't have his own lulav. There was a huge shortage. Not that Rabbi Kiva took it, but and he gave back to Rabbi Gamliel. When he gave it back, Milsa Agav Uchad Kamash wants to teach you matana al menas lahachzeh shema matana. In other words, if I give you a conditional gift, So it's not a loan, it's a gift at the time that you have it, you're totally yotze. If you don't give it back to me, then it's like you stole it and you're not yotze at all. If you gave it back to me, yotze. Yehoda said, hey, look, here's your esrig, amanas on the condition, li. Here's your esrig on the condition, you give it back to me. Not like he took it, the yotze boy, and he was yotze, sorry. Robert says, we have also the same Gemara in Kedushin. If a guy says, hey, look, I'm giving you a assessing on condition that you give it back to me, not like the guy that took it and it was yates with it. It depends. If he gave it back to him, yates is yates. You give it back to him, then retrospectively you stole it and you're not yates. And then that's what we're coming to teach you. So Taisus and all the Shem discussed. We know that we will have Kedushin and other places. There are 4 conditions, and in Gittin, there are 4 conditions that need to be met when you make it tonight. You need it tonight. First, you mention the condition, and then you mention what I'm going to do for it, and then the hein kaidin malav. First, you got to be positive before you said, if you do this, then this is it. If you don't do it, it's something else, and so on and so forth. So, and one of the things is you have to mention both sides. You can't just say, here, take it on the condition. You have to say, but if you don't, you have to spell it out. It has to be a tonight kafel. You also have to say, but if you don't do it, and here it seems none of that is mentioned. So some people say you don't have to mention this case because it's so obvious. I need it back. So therefore, I don't have to mention when it's obvious, then you don't have to mention it, which is the halacha shulchan. But others say that no, that it's talking about he did spell it out. The Gemara didn't bother going through all the details, the minutiae, because it's not relevant here. And in that case, you have to say. In Hayom Yom, it says by Sukah that when you give other people to Ben Shulul, you should say Matan Hazard is good for you, good for everybody. This way, you gates according to everybody, not just on the first 2 days, and not just according to those who hold that it's good enough. Now the Gemara says there's a whole machlekes of shaynim matana maslahas. How do you understand it? If you gave someone a matana, let's say the esrik amanas, when he gives it back to you, do you have to make a kinyan to make it yours again, or gives it back to you just a continuation, a resumption of my ownership that was there before? As soon as he gave it back to me, he went right back to the previous status. The Rosh learns that matana al means matana is forever. But then you have the condition there's a rider there that you need to give it back to me. And his proof is from the din that you're not allowed to give a child a lulav and esrog the first day because a child can be koina but cannot be makna. If you give it to the child will acquire it, but he can't give it back to you. So it says the Rosh, if the pshat is that you don't have to make a new kinyan, doesn't have to give it back to you, doesn't have to sell it back to you, as soon as he gives it back to you, it goes back to the old way, then why can't a kid do the same thing? The fact that a kid cannot receive it, it proves, he says, the kid is kind of entirely, and then he has a chiyuv to give it back to you. And because he has a chiyuv to give it back to you, and the child can't do that, and you need to make a new kinyan. So according to the Rosh, you actually have to make a kinyan. You have to lift it and have and be koina yuluv and esrog again. According to others Rishonim, it just resumes back to what you started in the first place. In other words, it's not a case of blood. And therefore, all the Rishonim ask a question. We had the criteria of ownership is that you have the capacity to donate it to Hegdish, for example. But in Matan you don't have that capacity because you got to give it back. Even according to the Rosh, that says that it's totally yours, but you got to give it back. You got to give it back. So I don't have full capacity. So Trace's answer is, but I can make it Hegdish until I give it back to you, which makes more sense or easy to understand if you follow the Rosh. I gave it to you completely. Because you can do whatever you want with it, but you have a right, you have to give it back to me. So you can make it Hegdish, and it's a side reason why you have to give it back to me. So, but Hegdish in theory you can make Le'il Vod. And the only reason why you can't do it for Le'il Vod is because you have to give it back to me. So since you can make it Hegdish for the 5 minutes, that's good enough. Others say that it doesn't mean literally you have to be able to make it Hegdish. That's only in a story where we had more during a whole story. The guy banned his father from having any benefit from him, and he wanted him to come to the chasana. So therefore, he decided to donate the entire wedding, the food of the wedding, to a friend, so that his father can come to the wedding. It's not his wedding that his father is joining, or his food is someone else's. And the whole thing was a trick. So when we said, since the friend, it's not like a matnas based chayden, it's not like that kind of gift that you have total ownership. It's not really a gift. There was a trick. Here, it's real. The guy wants you to be yaitz of the lulav and esrog. So therefore, it doesn't matter if you can make it Hegdish or not. Okay, so the Gemara then says, what do you have to tell me about $1,000? Why tell me quarter of $1,000? What's the relevance of that? Just to demonstrate to you how dear mitzvahs were on him. Others say that the reason is because we have a rule like tzedakah, you're not allowed to give more than a fifth of your fortune. We would have thought that maybe there's a limit also when it comes to other mitzvahs. You're not allowed to give more than a certain amount. I'm to tell you, there's no limit, there's no cap. If you want to spend as much as you want for a mitzvah, you can. My father loved, you talking about loving the mitzvah, he didn't have that kind of money, but what he did, he used to daven and hold the lulav in his hand throughout the entire davening because he loved the mitzvah so much. So talking about that, Meisel that's a question. A person should not hold. When we say daven, we mean shemoneh. A person should not hold tefillin in his hand while he's davening shemoneh, or sefer Torah b'cheika, or sefer Torah in his bosom while he's davening shemoneh be foul. And why is that? Because since you are so you're worried about the tefillin or the sefer Torah, they shouldn't fall down and get ruined or should be embarrassing. So therefore, you can't focus on your davening. Nor should you, while you're holding tefillin or sefer Torah, go ahead and urinate. You shouldn't sleep like Shayna's keva, like Shayna's ada. Should sleep, but not even temporary. And we learned before, the different answers. One of them was that it was in your hand, and if it was scared, it'll fall down if you go to sleep. But Shmuel expands this, and he says not only sefer Torah and tefillin, but also sakin, a knife, kind of plate, kicker, loaf of bread, or mice, or money. Any of these commodities you're holding in your hand, you cannot focus on your shemoneh. You can't see where it'll fall down. So we see that we don't want you to hold in the shemoneh. What do you mean your father held a lulav in his hand while he was davening shemoneh? Says the Gemara, there it's not a mitzvah to hold in your hand, and therefore it's a burden and you're thinking about it, you cannot focus on davening. Here it's a mitzvah, taking is a mitzvah. The light taribu. What exactly means l'chayda? Because Rashi is hard to understand. Maybe what Rashi means here is that because there it's a totally separate mitzvah. What does the holding the tefillin in your hand or the sefer Torah in your hand have to do with your davening? Nothing. And because it has nothing to do with your davening, therefore it's mutually exclusive, or they're contradicting each other. So therefore you cannot focus on shemoneh. Here it's Yom Tov, and hal and lulav is appropriate. If a mitzvah hold lulav, you can hold it through by hal. So therefore it's not a totally separate mitzvah. It blends in to the Yom Tov, it fits into the Yom Tov, and therefore it's not going to detract you from shemoneh. In fact, we use that to explain. It's brought down in the Ritva, and Brother Shlomo brings down the name of other Rishonim. Why are you allowed to hold a siddur in your hand when you're davening shemoneh? In fact, there are those who say you shouldn't hold a siddur. There's a whole argument if it's better to daven from a siddur or not from a siddur. And the problem is certain parts of the siddur are dvarim shebal peh. And certain parts of Siddur are Shebiksav. We have a rule that anything written in the Torah, you're not allowed to say by heart. We have another rule, anything by heart, you're not allowed to say inside. So what's better to do by davening? Is it better to say by heart, but then Shema Yisrael and all that is Dvarim Shebiksav, you should look inside. Or other parts of davening which are not from Torah Shebiksav, that maybe that were added on by Ashkenaz Doila, you should not allow to say it, you're not allowed to say it inside, only by heart. So there's a whole argument. But then the question is, how can you even hold a siddur in your hand? We just said you shouldn't. But because the siddur is there to enhance your davening or to help you out in davening, to know what to daven, therefore we're saying you are focused on the davening. That's what you're holding the siddur for. Just like the lulav over here, you're allowed to. The other person leaves the house, he has a lulav in his hand. He goes to shul, the lulav has a lulav in his hand. He reads kishma mispal and he dabbles the lulav in his hand. He reads the Torah, the noise says kappa. So the whole, you see clearly the Yishlayim had a custom, they would hold the lulav in the hand the entire time. They bring an eye from here that says that you go to shul with the lulav in the hand, means that you actually made a bracha before you go to shul. There's a big argument, when's the best time to bench lulav? Is it right after shemoneh before hal, which many say you should, and the Arizal said you should dafka do it before you go to shul. The Arizal, the Shalah, they say dafka first thing in the morning. And right here in the Gemara it says you pick up the lulav and you walk to shul, and it's as part of your mitzvah. So it must be you did the mitzvah of lulav already, you already made the bracha, and now you're continuing with that mitzvah. Otherwise, what bring it up? If the only reason you're taking it to shul is because you need a lulav in shul, has nothing to do with the mitzvah. We're trying to show here how chaviv the mitzvah was, that they did it as a mitzvah. So that's the idea to bring. And the reason is that Shalah says many or most, sorry, not Shalah, Achrayim say the reason is because of his Magdil mitzvahs, you want to do it first thing in the morning. If you're looking now to Rebbe Siddur, he says exactly the opposite. He says the main mitzvah actually is after davening Shachris, right before Halal. But because we have a problem that you're gonna be, it's ideally you should make it in a sukkah, and everybody's gonna walk out of shul to go into the sukkah, it'll be disturbing and so on. So therefore, we do it first thing in the morning. Totally different reason than what other people are saying. So it's like a pshara between the two. Best time to do it after davening, after Shemini Esrei, before Halal. But practically speaking, we do it before we go our house. Not because it's easy like the mitzvahs, but because we have to do it inside a sukkah, and it's easier to do it at home inside a sukkah. Anyway, then he continues. He says, but when you're reading the Torah, you have to put the lulav on the ground. You cannot, hold the lulav in your hand. And Rashi says, why? Because you have to roll the Sefer Torah. From here, they bring a raya that you actually have to hold on to the Sefer Torah in order to make a rocha. In fact, I saw Salvation was paskening, JB Salvation was paskening that if you don't hold on Bamudim in the Torah, you cannot make the bracha. So the bracha is not so much on the reading, but it's more on the fact that you're holding on the Torah when you're reading. And therefore, in this last year, when everyone said, you're not hold on the Torah, according to him, you were not able to make a bracha. You should just go for a liyah, no brachas, which I didn't see any of the modern Orthodox rabbis say that, but he clearly said that. Then he continues and he says, we learn that from right here, why you have to put the lulav on the ground. The noise is kappa, when you do it, obviously you have to put it on the ground because you have to lift your hands there.
Isn't there a bizarre in putting it on the ground?
You put it upright. So it's not a bizarre. You're doing it in a kabbalistic way. Just the very bottom of the lulav is on the ground. Then he says here, and so on Yom Tov you can menachem avol. You're not supposed to be menachem avol on Yom Tov. Maybe somebody passed away on Yom Tov itself, so you just want to go over and not literally be menachem avol, but to give him words of comfort. He still walked around the lulav. In other words, the mitzvah was so dear to them. When he came to learn, he would send it off with one of his somebody who was with him, one of his attendees, because then they couldn't concentrate. They had to worry about it. Says the Gemara, Micah someone's going to teach you to show you how much they love mitzvahs, that they carried a lulav all the time. And some of the Rishonim say that's the reason why we make a bracha after you already had the lulav in your hand. Why can you make a bracha after you have the lulav in your hand? Because they say that the mitzvah continues on, not only because of the nenuyim, but even after the nenuyim, it's a mitzvah to hold the lulav in your hand, doing all these other activities. So therefore, taking the lulav to your car is like maybe part of the mitzvah, who knows? But since it's still a mitzvah, you can make the bracha because you're you're still involved in the mitzvah. And you can make a bracha if you're involved in the mitzvah still, like we learned by washing the hands. Okay, we'll continue tomorrow in Mitzvah Hashem.